All right, so before we begin, we'll do a meditate. Before we begin the talk on the topic, we'll do our beginning meditation. Remember the three phases of every meditation. They are entering the meditation, abiding in the meditation, and then getting out of the meditation. In the abiding phase, that's where we do the work that we're supposed to be doing for the meditation. In the beginning, we need to set our intention. Each time you're about to sit to meditate, you have to have as clear of an intention as to why you're meditating and your understanding as to what is meditation. But rather than come up with some sort of intellectual understanding of what meditation is, just say the word and then allow whatever part of you that is interested in meditation, allow that part to come to the surface and guide you as to what is it that you're going to try to get into. And your body, believe it or not, knows how to meditate much better than the mind. Okay, so listen to the body nicely, carefully. So, intention to enter meditation. And just feel the body, hold that intention. While you are aware of the body and holding that intention, sort of scan the body, making sure that you are comfortable and that you are actually listening to that intelligence within the body that is guiding you. So when you bring your attention to your legs, let the body guide you, how you should have your legs. Are they already comfortable? Should you make any adjustments? You will just feel a compulsion or impulse to make an adjustment. Understand that impulse or compulsion to be coming from the intelligence in the body itself. So don't think that you're being impulsive or fidgety. It's not quite fidgety yet. And after you check the legs and you feel a certain kind of confidence that it's comfortable and it's ready for meditation, then you move. You continue to scan upward to the torso, the front torso, the back torso, back of the torso, making sure the back is attentive, not stiff, and not in a way that you're going to fall in any direction because the spine is not erect enough. Then the shoulders and the arms. And as far as the mudra is concerned, it helps so that in case you're about to be distracted, the very position of the hands will remind you that you're meditating. So put it in a way that reminds you that you're meditating. There's no absolute perfect or absolute posture where everyone is supposed to hold their hands. So whatever reminds you that you're meditating, for now, that's the one you take. Head and neck centered, so there's no need to hold them in place. They're able to keep themselves where they are because they are stable. Mouth, teeth, tongue resting in their natural places. Muscles of the face relaxed. Your eyes, again, just like the hands, they help you to go deeper in the meditation. So if closing your eyes helps you, then close your eyes. If you need them to be slightly open, then slightly open, halfway open, fully open, staring upward, whatever helps you go deeper in meditation, that's the one you choose. And once you have this sort of confidence that the body, the posture is conducive to meditation, You take that confidence with you to the breath. As you breathe in, you simply know you are breathing in for now. As you breathe out, you simply know you are breathing out as you are breathing out. Notice the signs that you are beginning to enter meditation. The signs are already beginning to appear in the body, in the breath, and the mind. As soon as you notice any measure of them, rejoice and welcome that sign. And I learned this phrase of the breath as a bridge from the outer to the inner on my yoga days when it used to be called hatha. So stay on the bridge of the breath. And you're about to fully commit to enter and abide in a meditative state. Hold that intention strongly. And sometime with just the power of that intention, you can find yourself sort of pierce through the meditative state where the signs are a bit more enhanced. Or you can use the breath again as a stepping point. Taking a nice deep breath, holding it for a moment or two, and as you release, you let go in the body, let go in the breath, let go in the mind, keep letting go, keep letting go. As you let go, notice the signs enhancing, keep letting go. As you notice the signs enhancing, keep letting go. And at the end of that breath, you stay where you've reached in terms of the signs, allowing the breath to return by itself. And just holding that intention for the breath to return by itself, just holding that intention to stay where you've reached, you find yourself breathing in a skillful way that allows, that maintains the where you've reached at the end of that exhalation. So stay there, stay there. Notice the calm that is calmer in the body, in the breath, and the mind. Rejoice. Notice the measure of pleasantness in the body, the measure of pleasantness in the breath, the measure of pleasantness in the mind. Notice them, rejoice. And notice how you are aware of things, how things are appearing, how clear they are appearing, how distinct they are appearing, whether they are inner sensations, whether they are thoughts. How are they appearing? How clear are they appearing? That's the clarity of mind. Rejoice. And how vivid are these appearances? How vivid is that sensation? How loud, how strong, how sharp? That's the luminosity that you are now witnessing and experiencing. Rejoice. And how collected is your focus? Try to find that sense of your attention being directable, being able to be directed. Find that. At first, it will be kind of difficult to find it. It's just that your attention is somewhere, but when you become aware of your attention being somewhere, you sort of lose the sense of the attention that you are aware of. So don't worry about that. So whenever you have a sense of attention being somewhere, rejoice. Now we are in the abiding phase, and this is where we do the work. And the work we are going to do here is bring your attention to the space in front of you at the level of your eyebrows. And you begin to have a sensation in the forehead. Whatever that sensation is for you, don't think it's supposed to be one specific sensation and you're having another and you are discarding it. Whatever sensation you feel there, that's the appropriate one for you. Whether it's a pulse, whether it's heat, whether it's cold, whether it's magnetic, whatever it is. and follow this visualization. So in that space in front of you, notice a tiny point in space. That it is as small as the head of a pin. And there seems to be intense light coming through it. Like there's a brightness so fierce that it's piercing through that tiny little hole in space. And there's something about it that is alluring and you're attracted to it. And you relax so you can be more aware of this tiny hole in space in front of you. And there's something about it that makes you very curious to find out what is causing that light behind it. And you continue to relax more. And the more you relax, the deeper you go into the signs, the calmer you become, the more pleasant the experience of the pleasantness, the clearer the sense of awareness becomes, the more vivid the sense of awareness becomes, and the more collected your sense of attention becomes. And that sensation in the forehead is a bit stronger, is a bit sharper. And just like when you're looking through a keyhole and you forget about the door, you forget about everything around it, but just focusing on that aperture of the keyhole, you begin to be aware of what's behind it. So in the same way, everything else sort of fades in the background and only what's behind that tiny hole interests you, and it begins to expand only because your consciousness is so focused in it, it seems to be expanding. And eventually it gets to be the size of a person. And now you see what is behind the brightness, this beautiful brightness, this soft, beautiful brightness. You can't quite see exactly what is causing it, but it's a person. And there's something more alluring about it. And you keep looking, you keep wondering, you keep you're very curious and interested in finding out, who is that? And as you're looking at it and you start to naturally feel a sense of connection, you find it easy to direct appreciation, to direct love, respect, trust towards that presence. And like our vision becoming accustomed either to a very bright room or very dark room and starting to see what's in the room. So our vision is now have become acclimated and we are beginning to see who we are seeing. Who is it that we find ourselves appreciating naturally, trusting naturally, loving naturally, having deep respect for naturally? It is our potential self, the self that we feel we have the potential to be, or the self that we feel in essence, that's what we are, that's who we are. And naturally, We understand why we felt such deep respect. And now we consciously express that sense of disrespect. Consciously express this sense of respect and trust. And we feel grateful for this vision. It's like a confirmation. This is what you felt you are, but for some reason didn't have any sense or vision if it was real or not. Now it looks and feels very real. Allow this self that you've been sensing to guide you. How do you fully embody that self? What should you do? What should you stop doing? Just have that open question and be ready to receive. Don't worry about such things as making sacrifices, but rather think of finally you can let go of what you need to let go of for certainty. Now you can take up the things that you need to take up with certainty without fear of not gaining or losing. And just feel free in acceptance and readiness. And that beautiful self comes through that aperture, comes to the crown of your head. You feel your entire space where you are is illuminated by its presence. You can even smell the perfume of its great qualities permeating the space where you are. And with a sense of, I am ready, I am ready. I'm ready to be shown with certainty what I am doing that I should stop doing, what I'm doing that I should continue to do, what is it that I'm not yet doing that I will need to do. You're ready. And because of the sincerity of that readiness, that bright being descends through the crown of your head, enters your heart, and be ready to let go. And let go. And for a brief moment, see yourself as your ideal self, engaging the world, relating with the people that you know, the people that you don't not know yet, the people that you knew, relating with your environment, relating with this life of yours. And let it go. Go back to just the space of the meditation that you are right now. Notice the measure of calm in the body. the measure of calm in the mind, the measure of calm in the breath. Rejoice. Notice the measure of pleasantness. Rejoice. Notice the clarity. Notice the radiance of consciousness, awareness. Notice the sense of attention collected. Rejoice. And to that part of you that is very wise, that already knows, that understands, be in alignment with it as we listen to this talk. So get ready now to do the third and last phase of the meditation, the coming out. Knowing that you are indeed in meditation, make the intention to come out. With the strength of your intention, you can come out and feel yourself actually leaving that space and entering into a different space of consciousness. Or use the breath again, a nice deep breath. Hold, and then release. And as you release, let yourself reconnect with your immediate surroundings, deliberately be aware of whatever it is that is making contact with your sense of touch, the temperature of the room, the feel of your clothing on you. Deliberately be aware of the sounds in the room, and deliberately be aware of the lights, the shadows, the colors, the shapes. Okay. All right, that was a little bit longer than I thought I was going to be, but these things, you know, they have a mind of their own. And this meditation that we did, it was could be confusing, especially after the topic especially with the topic that we have. The reason that I chose this topic is because once in a while, lately, I've been hearing people who have been studying the Dharma for some time, or who have some familiarity with the Dharma, and they definitely have an understanding of, heard, or somewhat familiar with the term anatman. Anatman is the term in Buddhism that is, like you could say, the central theme, the central core of Buddhism. If the idea centered around self, when you translate the term, and it means literally non-self, not self, no self. And since it is this thing that we are supposed to understand, this is this thing that we're supposed to come to have, it is this concept that we're supposed to fully understand for us to achieve the things that Buddhism is promising us to achieve. A better life, a better existence, an attainment called nirvana, nibbana, enlightenment. It is all centered around this understanding this term anatman. Now, when you think you are understanding it, it seems like what it's saying, it's denying that you exist. You have to come to a realization that you do not exist. And that somehow, when you realize that you do not exist, you will be liberated. And of course, when the encounters that I've been having with some of my colleagues and some friends is to sort of show a deep understanding of the teaching, or so something is happening in their life, or something is happening with somebody's life, and then they want to make a statement that sounds very profound. Well, there's no self anywhere, so who's going to achieve this or that? There's no self anywhere. Who's suffering? There's no self anywhere. Who's going to be happy, right? And of course, when they say there's no self anywhere, it's like saying, before you disagree with me, I'm throwing something at you that you cannot disagree with. There is no self. Of course, that's the term, no self. Now, how are we supposed to understand this thing so that we can actually be practical in our lives? How is this understanding supposed to help us relate better? Remember, the reason for the teaching of no self is not philosophy. It's not to give you a philosophy in a sense of something for you to entertain in your mind, but rather something very, very, very practical, something to help you deal with your life, with your existence in a very immediate way. That's why the teaching of no self was given, was taught. It wasn't something for you to simply have a nice idea about and then to contemplate, oh, that would be a nice idea, or to be able to write deep philosophical papers about. So that wasn't the purpose of it. And of course, whatever teaching that you are reading in Buddhism, whether it's the Theravadan canon called the Pali canon, or whether you're reading the Mahayana canon, or you're reading the mantra, the Vajrayana canon, it is centered about some understanding of self. In some ways, it seems to be saying there is no self whatsoever. And I know people who have been who are long-time students, devoted students of Buddhism, who will whenever anyone mentions a self, they immediately say, "There's no self anyway. There's no self. There's no self." And in a way, you could say they are right in making that statement, but we have to sort of understand what is going on in their mind when they say there is no self. And I'll briefly relate an event that happened with the Buddha, where the Buddha was saying to some of his disciples, when a regular person looks at a glass of water and says, "Oh, look, a glass of water," the Buddha says that person is completely wrong. But when an arhat, someone who knows reality and who is free from ignorance, looks at a glass of water and says, "Ah, look, a glass of water," he said that person is completely correct. So what's going on? So it depends on the person who's saying self and no self to know exactly what is it that they're pointing to. What is it that they're pointing to when they're saying, oh, that self, it doesn't exist? What is it that they are observing that they're saying, no, it doesn't exist? Because it is kind of, it will be kind of, I don't know, silly, at least, for the Buddha to say, oh, there's no self. That's what I've discovered. You don't exist. And then he spends like 50 years teaching people. Who is he teaching? Who is teaching? If there's no self, just disappear and go away. Why should you care about whether people hear your teaching or not? If there is if no self means self, nobody exists. Oh, by the way, you don't exist. Who are you talking to? Was the Buddha crazy and he didn't see anybody? He said, oh, I don't see any self. And he was seeking some sort of validation. If there's anybody out there, please talk to me because I don't see any selves. Okay. So definitely, he wasn't talking about, he wasn't saying that you who are listening to me, you do not exist. But that would be silly. It's the same thing I say. There is an understanding of, there is this teaching that says everything is everything is your mind. But we cannot take that teaching to be completely literal. Because if indeed everything is your mind, then who are you talking to? Who are you conveying this message to? Yourself, because everything is in your mind. There's no one else but your mind. So who are you telling this revelation to? Everything is in your mind, if indeed that is the absolute truth. But there is some understanding of it where maybe language fails to convey exactly what is the meaning. Just like there is a understanding that language fails to fully convey the meaning, where the Buddha had to use such silly phrase that there's no self when he's talking to a bunch of people who are listening to them, who are listening to him, and the people, and he's telling them, he's actually telling them, if you don't do this, you will suffer. If you do this, you will have this. If you do that, you will have that. So if there's no self, who's going to experience what? Who's going to be doing what? Who's going to be experiencing the result of what? If there's no self. So there's a way, there's an understanding that he wanted us to have. And it goes to somewhat to that story where the Buddha said, those ordinary people, they look at a glass of water, they say that's a glass of water, they're completely misled, completely wrong. But these arhats, these enlightened beings, they look at a glass of water and they say a glass of water, they are correct. And it wasn't that, somebody was projecting an image, somebody time traveled and then show them a movie of a glass of water, and then he was showing to ordinary people, and they say, oh, that's a glass of water. And the Buddha said, no, that's wrong. And then there was a real glass of water on the table, and the arhats were looking at it and said, that's a glass of table. Say, oh yeah, they're correct. Okay. It wasn't anything that fanciful. Okay. It was that in the mind of ordinary people, the mind of ordinary beings, there is a way that we relate to reality that is not in alignment with reality itself. And we relate to that way as though that was it, that was reality. Okay, so in a sense, when the thing says it's in your mind, imagine you're having an argument with someone and they are accusing you of things that, wait a minute, did I say that? I don't remember saying that. Did I do that? I don't remember doing that. So the person is actually angry with someone that's in their mind, you could say. So that person that they're angry with is entirely in their mind. So in that sense, because there's a way that we relate with reality that is not in an alignment with reality, that kind of reality we say is erroneous. So with that way, this misunderstanding of reality, when we are looking at ourselves, that misunderstanding accompanies our perception of our experiences. And there's a sense that we have about a self having these experiences. It is that sense of the self that doesn't exist. And in order for us to actually arrive at how that self does not exist, we have to first stop and fully understand, how do I understand myself? How do I understand any identity? What are the emotional components? What are the understandings that I have that accompany this perception, this idea that I hold when I'm perceiving a self, when I'm relating with a self? Okay. And sometimes, and it's because of this way of relating with the self, this way of understanding the self. That's why when we are having certain experiences, we become overexcited. or when we become overly depressed, overly sad. And I'm using the word overly, not that there should be no reason for us to have any sadness. There should be no reason whatsoever for us to be happy or to be to have any sense of contentment or enjoyment. But overly meaning eventually we will disappoint ourselves. How is it that why are we going to disappoint ourselves? What is going to be the disappointment? That is, there is something that we were expecting that is not there. That we're expecting to encounter something. There's a quality, a way of being that we were expecting about ourselves that we eventually not able to meet because it wasn't real. It wasn't something that was in alignment with reality. And when you could choose any sutra, any doctrine of the Buddha, and where he's talking about, and eventually talks about no self. And I remember one right now where the Buddha is talking about the elements, how the elements are not the self. So listen carefully, right? So you could say that the Buddha is talking to an audience that share an understanding about self. As a matter of fact, to use the term self, the English term self, actually does a disservice, because the people who speak English, when they use the word self, what were they pointing to describe, what is it that they were describing when they used that word, when they came up with that word self? Is it the same thing that the people around the Buddha, is it the same thing that they were looking at, when they said, use the word Atman? Or did they share an understanding? It was like a cultural sharing of a cultural understanding of that term Atman. And that's why the Buddha kept pointing to it and said, no, there is no Atman. There is no Atman. Okay. So if the Buddha spoke English, if it wasn't an English speaking culture, would he have used the word self, or would he have used something else? And sometimes when scholars are trying to translate the word Atman, they say soul. So to sort of make a distinction between self and soul, personality, identity. So imagine a term that sort of encompass all these things: soul, self, identity, personality, all these kinds of things. Okay. So try to, at least before we come to, oh, it means soul, the thing that God created when he breathed into Adam for the first time. That's how we sort of understand soul, at least right now in the Western world. Those who are, have a connection to that kind of background. Okay. And if you're in psychology, the id, the ego, and ego is another term that we use in the West. Maybe that's what they're referring to, ego. And we can't even fully agree on what ego is supposed to stand for, but there is an emotional understanding of the term. But when we try to put it into words, we seem to go in a different direction. When just that instinctive understanding you have when you hear your ego, stop there before you go into it any further. Okay, just stop right that first moment when you hear ego, the first moment when you hear self. Stop there. Don't go into philosophy. Don't go read books about it, but just stay with that sense of it. Okay, that's what he was trying to refer to. Now try to see if you can connect that to this story. Okay, try to understand what is it that the Buddha is pointing to those people that they seem to have an understanding of when he said no Atman. Okay, so you don't understand what the word Atman is, but you're going to try to understand it. So the Buddha is sitting down, giving a discourse to a group of people, and he's talking, okay, he's going to talk about the elements. He said, you can say there are 4 elements, and you can say there are 6 elements. What are the 4 elements? No, we already know. And he said, if you point to 6 elements, it's the material 4 elements: the earth, water, air, fire, right? These are the 4 elements. And when you add 2 more elements, the 2 extra elements are space and then consciousness. And sometimes in some other discourses, the Buddha talks about 7 elements. Okay, so what is an element? So bring that understanding to your mind. An element, right? It's like a unit of something distinctively distinct, a distinct unit of something, right? Of existence. And things are supposed to be comprised of a arrangement of these elements. So earth, water, fire, air. And then you have space and then consciousness. So 6 elements. And sometimes, if you want to throw in time in there, you could have a 7th element, time as an element. So let's just stick with 6, because that the discourse that I'm talking about, Buddha was talking about the 6 elements. So, and what is he doing in this discourse? He's looking for Atman. He's looking for Atman with the people that he's talking to. So that means they already have an understanding of what Atman is supposed to be. And these are the possible places where Atman is supposed to be found. And it's like, okay, take existence. How many elements would you say you can sort of break it down to? Okay, break it down to 6 elements. Okay, that means beyond these 6 elements, there's nothing. Nothing exists. If it exists, it is a combination of these elements. Not necessarily all of them, but some combination of these elements. Okay. And then he looked at the first element, the second, the earth element. He said there's inner earth element, there's outer earth element. And listen, what is inner earth element? What did he say? He said it is the elements found inside the person. The muscles, the bones, the flesh of the person. Is there an Atman there? And he said, these things depend on conditions for them to exist. Because they depend on conditions for them to exist, they are not the Atman. So that already gives you a clue as to is the Atman that they were looking for. It doesn't fit. It's supposed to fit certain qualities for it to be Atman. And you're supposed to find it in these things when you take existence and you break it down into these elements. So it has to be in these elements. And you look at each of these elements, the earth element, your body, your physical body. Is there something Atman-like in your physical body? But in order for you to find an Atman-like quality in your physical body, first you must understand, what is this Atman-like quality I'm supposed to find in my physical body? If you do not understand what is this Atman-like quality I'm supposed to find in your physical body, then you could find it and not know that you found it. Okay? So that's why you need to understand, how do you feel when you call your name? What do you feel is responding to that name? When someone calls your name, what do you feel is responding to that call? That is close to what we can call the Atman. Okay? Now, there is a difference between, it's going to sound a bit shady, shady in the sense of, I'm really don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to throw some words. There is a difference between the fact that you responded and the sense of what you think is responding. You get that? You responded. That is different from what you think or what you sense is responding. The Buddha is more talking about what you sense is responding. And you have to, this was an exercise that is done, and you can do it yourself to get a sense of that, is to call your name and then feel what is responding. And once you've narrowed it down to what you sense is responding, try to really look at it to see what is it. Okay. Sometimes it feels like it's the body. That is, I am the body. Like if you're materialistic, so to speak, the body, the totality of the body, that's who I am. That's why I'm meaning the sense that is responding is the body itself. And you have to now look in the body to see if there is something within the body that is actually fits that sense that we call me, the self. So I'm not going to tell you what you're going to find, what you're not supposed to find, but that's where the sincere search begins. Okay. So the Buddha, remember, when the element of earth is inner and there's outer. Inside the person, connected to the person, the element of earth is this and that and this and that. Because these element of earth has these qualities to them, they're not Atman. And then now he goes to the other element. He goes to the other element, and he even goes to consciousness. And when you get to consciousness, and that's what we all think, oh, that's it. That is what is responding to the name. That is what is responding to, that is what I feel the sense of me is. It is just pure consciousness. And they say, what is your experience of consciousness? What has been your experience of consciousness? Look at it. Really look at it. Is it something that is also conditional? That one condition, for example, to hear a sound, you need hearing power, you need hearing organ, and even with those, there's not going to be any sound until some vibration of a certain order hits the ear, and then there's sound. Okay, and until that happens, there is no awareness, consciousness of sound. So the consciousness of sound is conditional. So at least what we are calling consciousness. Okay, there's a sense of consciousness that we think that exists without those kinds of conditions. But before we are able to say with confidence, to talk about this kind of consciousness, first we have to actually experience it. But right now, what do we experience as consciousness? It is those very conditional events. Okay, so are those conditional events, do they fit what you sense when you are sensing self, sensing me? And again, the Buddha said, because they are conditional, they are not self. And now what are you left with? Because you look at all these elements that's supposed to comprise the totality of existence. And if what I feel is the self supposed to exist, I'm convinced it exists because it reacts. When it's being harmed, it reacts. When it is praised, it reacts. It relates. I think it feels that way. But when I look in all the places where it should be found, it is not found. And it is this not finding of it that is referred to as not self. And because of that, now there are two things happening in the mind. There is the misunderstanding, the general misunderstanding of reality, the general misunderstanding of reality that accompanies us. It comes from habit. Okay. When we hear something, it goes through the filter of this misunderstanding. And because it goes through this filter of misunderstanding, so there is some misunderstanding that's taking place. So when, in trying to understand what the Buddha is trying to point to, we are in this journey, in this discourse, and he's saying is trying to point to something that is significant to us. Finding the Atman, finding who I am really, 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 really. Take everything away, that's me. That kind of finding. And we are looking in every place where anything that exists should be found, and we can't find it. So listening, as we are listening, we are gaining some understanding, but some misunderstanding is there filtering what we are understanding. So we come up with a different misunderstanding. Like my friends who are saying, who's suffering? With the self, we don't exist. Oh, why worry about doing good deeds? There's no self. There's no self doing the good deed. There's no self who's going to receive the good deed. Right? So that is definitely a misunderstanding, because the whole point of teaching no self is to achieve something that everybody wants to achieve, is to arrive at a state of being that everybody wish to arrive at. You may call it whatever you want to call it, that way of being where you feel, finally, no more striving for this or that. Or if striving in what you want to do, you do it with glee. Ooh, I'm striving. Ooh, oh, sweet. I'm not striving. Ooh, oh, sweet. Okay. To get to that point, that's what in a sense that you can call the nirvana, the nibbana, or the enlightenment. Okay, that doesn't have to be some, oh my god, I don't want nirvana because all they drink is they only have milk there. Everyday milk. I want milk every day. So that's not nirvana, okay? Or they have cake every day. Who wants cake every day? All right, so that's some made up understanding of what nirvana is supposed to be. And of course, if that's what you think it is, of course, you're not striving to get there. Okay, so in that discourse, the Buddha was talking to some people, and he's telling those people, when you look here, and you find this, there's no Atman. So it's not that the Buddha is saying, come on, you don't exist, stop pretending you exist. Then the Buddha would need to be locked up somewhere. Okay. I'm telling them they don't exist. They don't want to. They don't want to believe me. Okay. So the exercise that I've been doing lately, very recently, I want to bring it up again for you to have a sense of self. Okay. Nizam mentioned what's that thing called? Interfamily. No, what's it called? This new sort of psychological paradigm that stole my idea. What do you call it?
It's IFS, internal family systems.
Internal family system. Yeah, some guy came to my mind and stole my idea and then published it.
That's most of Western psychology, Phuntsok.
Yeah. Internal family system. It's a beautiful system, presentation of understanding the self, but not entirely the way that it's presented, but from this perspective. We sense ourselves to be made up of different selves, right? We have that sense. And we even use it in language. That part of me that part of me does. And sometimes when we're trying to make a decision, there's a part of me that wants to do this. There's a part of me that wants to do that kind of stuff, right? So there's a sense that that there's a collection of selves that comprise what we call ourself, right? The confusion comes in trying to find out which one is the real self. There's a part of me that wants to go to Hawaii. There's a part of me that wants to go to Bali. I want to follow the real self. Because if I go to Hawaii and it's not the real self wanting to go there, I'm doomed. And if it's the false self that wants to take me to Bali, I'm going to miss out on Hawaii. So which self is real that I should follow? That's that's the mistake we make. We think that one of these decisions, one of these pull is being pulled by the real me. It's and somehow listen to this. There's a me that's in the middle looking at two other me's. And the me in the middle is confused, doesn't know, wait a minute, am I looking in the mirror here or am I not? Or am I looking at a mirage over there? And I can't tell the difference, which one is the mirror, which is the real me, and which one is just a mirage, which is a fake me, okay? So, I mean, that scenario itself is silly, right? Trying to decide which one is the real me, and who's the me who's trying to decide which of those is the real me, okay? That's not the real me? Okay, so we feel we have this as an actual experience, where especially when we enter into states of confusion, where we seem to be pulled by equally pulled by different wishes and desires and directions and aspirations. And there's a sense that somehow a real me is being deceived, okay? That's where we go wrong, thinking that there's a real me that we have to find, and then we will make the right decision, okay? So in that sense of the inner family system, that's it, right? Inner family system. So really think of this and then feel it. You are in the center of all yourselves. You know, there's the little kid you, there's the grown-up you, there's a part of you that is stuck, that is not stuck, like, should get out of there, but that's very identified with a specific event in time. There's a part of you that is very identified with some ideal, like I'm a compassionate person, or I am a selfish person, all these kinds. So all these kinds of sense of you that you felt pulling on you. So all these cells pulling on you. Who's the you that they're pulling on? Oh, they're all yourselves. Oh, never mind. Okay. So you're in the center of all yourselves. I'm going to ask a very silly question. Who's in the center? At the moment you say, I'm in the center of all my selves, you feel like the one in the center is the real self. The other ones, I'm giving them the name. I'm giving them the how to call that, the honor of being called me. The little kid who can't seem to be satisfied, who's stuck in that toy that never got, keeps nagging me. Leave me alone, me. Okay. So now think of the center this way. All the selves collectively looking at each other creates an illusion of a central self. And think of the one in the center as being that. So when you feel I am in the center of all my selves, it doesn't feel so separate, like I'm the real self, I'm just giving them the honor of being called selves. But rather, they are looking at each other, and as they're looking at each other, this collective sense feels like the center. And there's a sense of where this collective sense of self, because identity, self-identity is not fixed, it's fluid. Okay? It's fluid. Because when that little kid is very loud, you are identified as that kid. You are that kid when that kid is very loud. You don't think of the one in the center, I'm going to kick him out so I can be in the center. But you identify with that. So the sense of identity, think of the process of identifying as a function. Don't think of it as being you, but rather a function that can be put anywhere. I am sad and you are sad. I'm happy and you are happy. Okay? I am selfish and you are selfish. I'm generous and you are generous. So the sense of identity is very flexible. You can move it in any direction. And when you do, because it is a proper identification, when you put it somewhere, you are that for that moment. That's the flexibility of self, flexibility of identity. Where you put it, it is that identity. The thing to remember, keep reminding yourself, identity is flexible. When you feel, oh, I'm so ordinary, and you find yourself really ordinary, that means you've done a good job at identifying with being ordinary. And those moments when you feel extraordinary, and those moments you are extraordinary. But because it is because of habit, we take that identification of what on extraordinary, you put it back on ordinary and say, oh yeah, see, I was never extraordinary. And this is who I really am. I'm ordinary. See, I am feeling my identity now really connected with being ordinary. Because that's where your sense of identity is being at the moment. That's why you are really ordinary. But if you think of, imagine you had the ability, and you have it, but we're just not tapping into it. Right now, I'm convinced, listen, right now, I'm so convinced that I cannot make my body become light right now, that if I say, may my body become light, it doesn't become light. Okay, I'm gonna try it. I want my body to become bright light. See, it didn't happen. It didn't happen because I'm convinced that it cannot happen. That's why it doesn't happen. Okay. This is to say, there is, in the meditation, there's a self that we are aspiring to be, a way of being that we are aspiring to be. That's why we do what we do, the work that we do, the relationship that we hold, the relationship that we drop, because there's something that, a way of being that we are aspiring to be. And the reason that we are aspiring to that is because somewhere deep within us, there's the wisdom that tells us identity is flexible. I don't have to be this way. I don't have to identify with this way forever. I can identify with another way of being. But because of the habit of, once we identify with something, we sort of like, imagine you're an artist and you create a beautiful work of art, and you get lost in it, and you believe it to be real. And the reality around it is not real anymore. So it's like that. So when we do our work, we do it so beautifully that it becomes reality. We've done such an exquisite work at ordinariness that we encounter ordinariness everywhere. That's how incredibly powerful we are. That an extraordinary essential being that is essentially extraordinary can convince itself to be ordinary and be ordinary, have ordinary thoughts, have ordinary conversations. Okay. And by ordinary, I'm not downplaying everyday life. I'm talking about the ordinariness in the sense that that which is not where we want to be at the moment. That's what I'm referring to as that. Okay. So in the same way that we can create this ordinariness and actually exist in it and live it, it is that same process that we can use to live extraordinarily and be extraordinary. It's a matter of really understanding that when I call your name, that seems to be responding. What is your understanding of that? And knowing that it is not fixed. Knowing that it is not fixed. It is freedom itself. So here are, I'm going to throw out you now some of the terms that Nizam was throwing at you earlier. The big self, the little self, the collected selves. So the collective selves sort of have a sense of them. Be careful with big self and little self. Okay, be careful with those terms. Why? Because we are listening, we're trying to understand them with already set misunderstandings. Okay, so that is, take your conclusions with a grain of salt. Always keep trying to get to the real meaning. Try to get to the bottom of what it actually means. Okay, the big self, the little self. Okay, now here's the little self is, we can generally say, not that we are pointing at some specific thing, but rather think of when you are in the center of all your different selves, and understanding that that center is just all the selves looking at each other, and it's just a collective sense. Okay, so in that same way, the little self is that collective sense striving, trying to get somewhere. The big self is what it is aiming towards. Don't think of it as some definite you moving through time and space and finally coming in contact with a big you and saying, okay, what do we do now? When do I make the jump from here to here? And what's going to make the jump from here to here? Right? What's going to make the jump from here to here? So it's not really like that, but rather there's this constant flux, moving, identifying with various stages of being as and to say as it moves, it sounds like there's something moving. There isn't anything moving, right? It's just all those things coming together, and they create a sense of something, right? Like anything that you have, this laptop, this computer, metal, plastic, electricity coming together, and then we say laptop, right? It's not that someone took laptop, brought it in, and connected metal to it, and connected plastic to it, and connected electricity to it, right? So the self is like that. Okay. Right now, whatever set of beliefs you have, whatever set of convictions you have, together they comprise what you are calling self. Just like you can upgrade the laptop by removing this, remove this belief, remove that belief, put in this belief, put in that belief, and what you end up as a self would be something different. Okay. Yes, you exist. If you did not exist, why are you even here? Okay. You exist. It's trying to understand the you that exists, is trying to understand it. What is the nature of that you that exists? When you understand the nature of you that exists, that will determine what kind of experiences the you can have. If there are experiences that you do not wish to have, that you have, then there's something that you can do to change that. If there are experiences that you wish to keep, there are certain things you need to, and that has to do with the understanding of you. Okay. So when the Buddha said there's no self, he was pointing to that misunderstanding we have about ourselves. That's if that self that we hold with our misunderstanding, if we can somehow point to it, that will be the false self. Okay. It is the misunderstanding we have about our experiences. That's the self that doesn't exist. The misunderstanding that we hold about ourselves, that self of that misunderstanding doesn't exist. Okay. The sense of you having experiences, take away your misunderstanding that you is the only you that exists. And when I say the only you that exists, doesn't mean that you're stuck with being who you are right now. You can sense that you are not the same person when you were a baby, but for some reason you said that's me. And it's not that, and it gives us a sense that there was some discrete thing traveling in time and space from the baby up to now. It is merely, when I say flux, does that ring a bell for you? I hope it rings a bell for you. Okay. It is pure flux. And that's the beauty of the self. The self is magic, pure magic. Thank goodness the self is not some discrete thing, because it is pure magic. It can be anything. And do not misunderstand it, because it can be anything that it is, it's something that it should be. Okay. And the last thing, there's a flux of a creator. When you create, what you create becomes reality. There is no reality other than what is created. The self is a creation. Once you use your power to create a self, that self is real. Not ultimately real, but existing and having experiences, able to affect other things and able to be affected by other things. So when we did that meditation, the self that is aspiring, looking at the self that is ideal, and wanting to break the barrier between the two. And because it is flux, you can flux into the ideal. And you are the ideal, and that is you. And that becomes you. That is you. All right. I keep saying last thing. Uh, uh, so when they say there is no self, understand what it means. There is no self. What is the self that they're pointing to that say it doesn't exist? And having that sense of who you are, and doing this exercise of listening to someone calling you and trying to feel what is responding, and just sit and call yourself and then feel what is responding. Okay. Not that you're going to find the real you, but you're going to find at least your understanding of who you think you are, of who you believe yourself to be. Okay. And knowing that you can become whatever, because you're pure freedom itself. You can even have an experience where you feel yourself don't exist. That's how magical you are. Okay. You can go to, okay, I don't exist anymore. Okay, stop for me to stop not existing. Let me come out. Okay, sorry, I really dragged this one. Now it's almost 10 o'clock. And I thought, oh, there wasn't much to say. And as I'm talking, so, oh my God, I forgot this. Maybe there's going to be a self part 2 or something. Yeah. then we have, and I really want you to bring next time your convictions as to what you feel is the self. Okay, and let's look at them just like the Buddha collected the people and say, okay, all right, okay, we all say Atman. Okay, we all have understanding what that is. Okay, let's look for it. Let's find it. Okay. Okay. All right. Magical, beautiful, magical illusions. Thank goodness you're magical illusions. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to enjoy this. All right. Okay, so let's quickly end the meditation with a meditation, quick meditation. I'm sure you have questions. Let's write those questions down, and then we'll discuss them next time. Okay, in part 2. Okay. All right. So we're gonna meditate to close, and since the session, 2 meditation sessions are so close to each other, a very nice way to go back to the meditation session is to simply, as you are adjusting your posture, just remember, I was meditating earlier and tried to go there, and then my body felt like this. I felt like that in my breath. I felt like that in my mind, just remembering it. And as you beginning to, as you just remember, and you start to feel you're having those experiences. It's not just remembering anymore. And just let yourself go into that experience. Take a nice deep breath and let yourself go into the experience. Quickly notice the signs, rejoice, the calm, the pleasantness, the clarity, the radiance, the vividness, the sense of attention collected. And this time, go back to embodying your ideal self, physically, emotionally, mentally. Feel yourself ready to relate with your environment, ready to relate with others in your ideal sense of self. And sitting with the sense of being authentic. See all of us surrounding, all of us sitting in a circle. And think of each one of us sitting in their authentic selves, whatever that may be. And as a sign of sitting in your authentic self, you are glowing. We are all glowing. And we understand the self to be so flexible, so fluid, that this collective understanding goes and creates a bright presence in the center of our circle. It's like the authentic group. And it expands, as it extends and expands, it absorbs into its luminosity everything. So there's no appearance of differences anymore. And we feel ourselves to be this authentic collective self. And it expands until the entire earth is in it. And we feel the same response towards our left hand and our right hand. We still feel that same response for anything that we see. The ocean is me, the rivers are me, mountains are me, the clouds, the plants, the animals, the fish, the birds. And our identity can, just like we can shift it into that little me, that baby me looking at all the other me's, we can shift it into the mountain looking at the others, shift it into the river looking at the others, shift it into the sky looking at the others, shift it into a bird looking at the others. And when each time we do that, we are looking at our different parts of ourselves. And we let those other parts feel that we love them. And we feel that they love us. When we are the mountain, the sky loves us. We love the sky. We love the river. When we are the river, we love the sky. We love the mountains. When we are the bird, we love the trees. And the trees love us. And this image is a symbolic image of a understanding that we have. So we don't need this symbolic image anymore. And the image begins to shrink. And as it shrinks, whatever it absorbed into itself, it leaves glowing with this light, shimmering, until it comes to the very center of our circle. And feel all of us sitting there, confident in our authentic self, sense of self. Knowing that when we sincerely help other, we are sincerely helping ourselves. When we sincerely help ourselves, we are sincerely helping other. And with that realization, the last symbolic image of the light in our midst dissolves into each one of our hearts. Stay in that sense of feeling authentic, living our ideal self. Make a dedication. Gyawa di gyawa kun, Sönam yeshi dzogdzog shin, Sönam yeshi echung wen, Tamba kunyi toba shu. And whatever you sincerely wish to dedicate this session to, dedicate it. Make the intention to come out of the meditation. With that intention, take a nice deep breath. And as you release, let yourself reconnect with your immediate surroundings, feeling the clothing, feeling the environment, hearing and seeing the colors, the shapes, the lights, the shadows, the smiles. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And sorry for holding you for so long. All right. So remember your questions, bring them next time so we'll have a beautiful discussion. Okay. All right. Thank you.